Okay, I need everybody to calm down. I said, calm down, because I have been watching the news for the last 72 hours, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. Not because of the war, not because of the bombs, not because Tehran is on fire and the Strait of Hormuz is closed and natural gas in Europe jumped to 45% overnight. No, I'm losing my mind because of Congress. We are 4 days into a war, a capital W, actual missiles flying, people dying, aircraft carriers getting shot at, war, and Congress is sitting in Washington having a feelings conversation about whether they were included enough. You were notified before it happened, and your response is a resolution? We'll get there. Oh, we will absolutely get there. But first, the facts, because this is still a fact-checked channel. Even when the facts sound like a Netflix action series that get cancelled for being too unrealistic. Here's where we are as of today, March the 3rd, 2026. 6 American service members are dead. 6. The number went from 3 to 4 to 6 in less than 24 hours. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth stood at a podium at the Pentagon and said, and I'm quoting, "War is hell and always will be." Pete Hegseth said, "War is hell." That is true. That is historically accurate. William Tecumseh Sherman said it first in 1880, and he wasn't wrong then either. But there's something about hearing Pete Hegseth say it at a Pentagon briefing in 2026 that makes you go, we really did this, huh? The Iranian Red Crescent says at least 555 Iranians have been killed since Saturday, including Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei and members of his family. Iranian officials also reported that more than 168 schoolgirls were killed in a direct hit on a school. I'm going to let that number sit there for a second. 168 schoolgirls. That's not funny. That's just true. And it needs to be said out loud on this channel before we go anywhere else tonight. Those were children. Whatever you think about this war, those were children. Okay, the U.S. has now hit over 1,000 Iranian targets in 72 hours. Israel dropped more than 1,200 munitions across 24 of Iran's 34 provinces. And Trump told the CNN direct quote, "The big wave hasn't even happened. The big one is coming soon. The big one, sir." Sir, you have hit 1,000 targets. What exactly are you saving for the big one? What does that even look like? Are you building up to something? Is this a warm-up? And what point does the big one just become? The war? Now we get to Congress. And I need you to understand, I say this with complete love and zero respect. Congress right now is giving the energy of someone who just found out their roommate threw a party while they were out of town. You had people here without asking me. I live here too. Yes, Congress, you live there too. Article 1 of Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to declare war. The strikes were launched without congressional authorization. The Gang of 8 party leaders from both chambers plus Intelligence Committee leadership were notified by the White House shortly before the attack. Shortly before? Not days before, not weeks before. Shortly before. Like a text that says, "Hey, starting the war in 20. Wanted you to know. Thumbs up." A Democrat on CNN said, and this is a real quote, "It's a slap in the face of the United States of Congress." A slap in the face. I need to ask a serious question. When was the last time Congress's face wasn't being slapped? Because from where I'm sitting, Congress has been getting slapped since 2001, and they just keep showing up to the same restaurant. The War Powers Resolution, which Congress passed in 1973 after Vietnam, specifically to stop presidents from doing exactly this, has been ignored by literally every president since Nixon. Everyone, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. The last time Congress actually declared a war was World War II, when Franklin Roosevelt was president. World War II. That was 1941. Your grandparents were alive in black and white. Congress has not formally declared a war since then. They have watched Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, all of it, without ever formally declaring anything. And now, Now, in 2026, they want to have that conversation? Better late than never, I guess. Now, here's where it gets genuinely, cosmically funny, because this war, unlike almost everything else in Washington, did not split cleanly down party lines. Kamala Harris said, direct quote, "Donald Trump is dragging the United States into a war the American people do not want. Fine. Expected." John Fetterman, a Democrat, said, "Operation Epic Fury, President Trump has been willing to do what's right and necessary to produce a real peace in the region. God bless the United States, our great military in Israel." John Fetterman, a Democrat, sound like a campaign ad for the other team. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican, mega royalty, Trump's biggest cheerleader for 4 years, said, and I quote, "We said no more foreign wars, no more regime change. Trump, Vance, basically the entire admin campaigned on it and promised to put America first." Marjorie Taylor Greene is out here sound like a progressive anti-war Democrat. Do you understand what has happened? The world has officially flipped. Democrats are sounding like Republicans. Republicans are sounding like Democrats. Fetterman is praising Trump. MTG is quoting the anti-war left. I don't know what's in the water in Washington, but I want none of it. Republican Thomas Massie, Kentucky, called the strikes acts of war unauthorized by Congress, and he teamed up with Democrat Khanna of California to write a war powers resolution to stop it. Thomas Massie, Khanna, Kentucky Republican, California Democrat, united against the war. In 2026, during Operation Epic Fury, I've seen stranger things, but I genuinely cannot remember when. You know what Dave Chappelle does that nobody else does? He tells you the uncomfortable truth, the one everybody's thinking but nobody's saying out loud in the middle of a bit when you least expect it. So here's mine. A YouGov poll taken on the very first day of the strikes, February the 28th, showed that only 33% of American adults approve of the U.S. attacking Iran, while 45% disapprove. 33%. America went to war, a war with missiles and aircraft carriers, and 6 dead soldiers and 555 Iranian casualties. And only 1/3 of the country said yes. Not because Americans are weak, not because they don't support the military, but because they remember. Americans remember Iraq. They remember the 20-year promise of ahead of schedule in Afghanistan. They remember the sons and daughters who came home in flag-draped coffins from wars that ended without victory. Trump posted a video Sunday saying the U.S. would continue attacks until objectives were met, without specifying what those objectives are, without specifying the objectives. We are at war. 6 Americans are dead. The big one is coming, and the objectives are undefined. That's not a joke. That's just what's happening, and it deserves to be said plainly. But I will end on this, because I promised you energy, and I always keep my promises. Pete Hegseth, defense secretary, former Fox News host, man who was confirmed by 1 vote, stood at the Pentagon podium and said, "Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel." He said they were gifted death, like it was a present. Like somewhere in Tehran, there's a poorly wrapped box with a little card that says, "From America with love." He then said, same briefing, "This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it. Not a regime change war, but the regime changed." That is the most Pentagon sentence ever constructed by a human being. It should be studied in schools as an example of how to say 2 completely contradictory things in one breath without technically lying. This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change. Hegseth, bro. Here's what I know. 6 Americans are dead. Hundreds of Iranians are dead. Schoolgirls are dead. The Middle East is on fire. Congress is writing resolutions they know probably won't pass. The objectives are undefined. The big one is apparently still coming. I don't have the answers. Nobody does right now. But I'll tell you this. The worst thing you can do in a moment like this is tune out. Stop watching. Stop asking questions. This channel isn't walking away from anything. Subscribe, hit the bell, share this with someone who needs to understand what's happening, because understanding is the first step to everything else. My name is David Jones Carpenter. This is David Jones Carpenter, and we are going to keep talking about this clearly, accurately, honestly, for as long as it takes. Stay safe, hug your people, pay attention. I'll see you on the next one.